subscribing to the channel. I post 2 times a week, Monday and Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I recommend using headphones to hear the gentle mic brushing. So let's get right into tonight's case. This one has remained a bit of a mystery over the years. And when I've finished telling you the case and all the details, you will have something to think about. You will be able to join the thousands out there who are still wondering what happened to Lindsay Buziak. So this case brings us to Canada, and the crime happened on February 2nd, 2008. A beautiful young real estate agent, only 24 years old, was brutally murdered during a showing of a house. So, let's talk about what led up to that. Lindsay was born on November 2nd, 1983, in Vancouver, British Columbia, and she was raised in a town called Saanich, which is a suburb of Victoria. She had 2 loving parents and a sister. She grew up to be a very likable and caring young woman, very ambitious, and wanted to have a successful and independent career. So she went to work in a field that suited her very well, and that was real estate. And at the time of this murder, she was working for a real estate agency called Remax. Now, she had a boyfriend for about a year, and his name was Jason Zalo. He came from a very wealthy and prominent family who owned a successful real estate company, and he also had his real estate license. And his mother was the manager of the real estate agency where Lindsay worked. His mother's name was Shirley, or is Shirley. So, on January 31st, 2008, Lindsay received a phone call on her private cell phone, which was not a number that she used for her job. And it was from a potential client. It was a woman who had what Lindsay felt was a strange accent, like like a Spanish accent, but yet it sounded like the woman was faking the accent. So it was really kind of suspicious, and when she asked the woman, "Where did you get my cell phone number?" the woman said she got it from one of Lindsay's other clients. Now, later, Lindsay did call that client to confirm, but she didn't get any answer after repeated calls. Anyway, the client with the funny accent said that she wanted to see a house. She needed to buy it in 3 days, and she had a budget of $1 million. And she told Lindsay exactly what she wanted. And Lindsay said, okay. She got off the phone and she was a bit confused, a little nervous. She spoke to her father, who was a real estate agent as well. He was living in Calgary at the time. And she said, "I'm a little nervous, I don't know. But it's a good opportunity, you know, I could make a big commission. I think I'll ask my boyfriend, Jason, you know, to come along and wait outside." And she spoke to Jason, and he said, "Yeah, you know, just do it. It would be a big, big commission. And yeah, I'll wait outside, no problem." Later on, he would say that the reason that he was waiting outside rather than going in was because Lindsay was a very independent person at the house at about 5:45, so now he's 15 minutes into the showing. Now, how long does a showing even take? I mean, I guess it depends, of course, but... So 15 minutes into the showing, he and his friend just sit outside and wait. But he notices right away a man standing at the door with his back to Jason. And then the man seems to notice Jason and closes the door. So Jason kind of thinks that the showing has just begun, and that's why the man closed the door. But a while later, nobody's coming out. So he goes up to the door and he tries to open it, but it is locked. He looks inside and he sees Lindsay's shoes on the floor. Now, a lot of times when you show a house, you take up your shoes at the door. That's kind of common, like, so you don't track dirt or whatever it is. So it's not unheard of. But he's concerned because the door is locked and he's ringing the bell and nobody's answering, so he goes ahead and calls 911. Meanwhile, the friend of Jason goes around looking for a way into the house. He gets through the fence through an opening, and the back door is open. He goes in and he opens the front door so that Jason can get in. Right away, Jason sprints up the stairs. Now, Jason has never been in this house before, but he sprints right up the stairs into the master bedroom, where he finds Lindsay laying in a pool of blood. She is right by the entrance to the master bathroom. And clearly, she is deceased at that point, sadly. So now the friend calls 911 again. The police come. She's pronounced dead. They take Jason and his friend to the police station for interviewing. And they are cleared and released pretty quickly because everything that they said that they had done that evening was supported by CCTV footage from the auto shop. Now, Jason also did a lie detector at some point, and he was cleared from that as well, but he refused to take a DNA test. Now, a witness from the area, like I think a neighbor, reports that they saw Lindsay outside on the driveway at around 5:30, talking to these clients. It was a blonde woman, Caucasian, between 35 and 40, and a man like about 6 feet tall with brown hair, also Caucasian, wearing a brown jacket. And the woman was wearing a particularly distinctive dress. So they put out a description of this woman in hopes that somebody would recognize her or the dress, but they got no information. Fingerprints, DNA, any evidence from the crime scene led to nothing. was that she had 40 stab wounds. And she had no defensive wounds, meaning she didn't see it coming. They obviously started stabbing when her back was turned. They felt that because there were 40 or more stabs, it was something personal. That it wasn't just some hired hit, because when it's a hired hit, they kill the person and then they get right out. They don't stay to stab the person 40 times. But like I said, there wasn't anyone out there that they thought would have something personal against Lindsay. And it seems that when Jason pulled up and saw the man, at that point they had already done the murder and were about to leave through the front door. But when they saw Jason, they closed the door and they left at the back. There was a pocket dial done by Lindsay at about 5:41, which they believe is the time when she was stabbed. That somehow in the struggle she accidentally pressed something on her phone and called somebody in her contact list. But there was nothing but static on the message, so they didn't get anything from that. The most valuable information, I believe, comes from a trip that Lindsay took to visit her father in Calgary in December of 2007. A couple of things happened during that trip. Number one, she told her father that she had seen something that she shouldn't have seen. But we don't know anything else. Apparently he didn't press her for any information. She didn't want to say anything else at that time, or I don't know, but that's all he got. Isn't that something? Not only that, while she was there, she made contact with an old friend of hers. Now, we don't know what the contact was exactly. We just know she made contact. Whether what they talked about or whether they ever saw each other is unknown. But this guy was related to a major drug lord who was part of the cartel over there. And shortly after this meeting, there was a massive drug bust, the biggest ever in that province. And lots of people were in a lot of legal trouble, and drugs were seized valued at $8 million. Now, these are some seriously dangerous people. So it is suggested that they believed she was a snitch, that she had spoken to this guy who was related to the drug lord, and the next thing you know, they're all in trouble. So she must have been an informant and they killed her. Could that be? Well, the police said no. They said she is not. She was not an informant. So that can't be it. Well, maybe they thought she was an informant and it was a mistake, so that's something a lot of people hold on to. another strange thing. A few years before that, in 2003, Lindsay had a different boyfriend. Now, they were somehow friends with some people who were involved in drugs once again. And everyone in this little, let's say, friend group, for lack of a better word, they all had their phones tapped, including Lindsay and her boyfriend. And there was another big drug bust in that situation, but it was determined that Lindsay had nothing to do with it, neither did her boyfriend at the time. They were just somehow acquainted with these people. They were never made to be witnesses at trial or anything. They just happened to have been, had their phones tapped, but they had nothing to do with it. So just a coincidence. And like I said, she has no criminal past. She wasn't a drug user. She's just getting together with the wrong kind of friends. I don't know why. It's all very confusing. Another tidbit of information which will not help you. It doesn't help me to figure anything out, but later in the year, in 2008, after the crime, after the murder, one of Lindsay's good friends, named Nikki, she got a phone call in the middle of the night. She answered the phone. It was an unknown caller. And when she spoke to the person, the woman on the other end had a weird and fake accent of some kind. Now, Nikki says she can't remember what the woman even said because she was half asleep. But as soon as they hung up, she snapped out of it. And she's like, wait a second. I remember Lindsay telling me about somebody with a weird accent. Who was this? So she starts calling the number back. She called it 20 or 30 times before someone picked up. And it was Jason's mother, Shirley. So she's like, hey, why did you call me? Like, she didn't even know her at all, okay? And Shirley was like, oh, I was trying to call my secretary. Her name is Nikki, but somehow I called you instead. Sorry. And she's like, well, how do you have my number? And she said that Jason must have put it into the phone. Meanwhile, Shirley denies that this ever even happened. But even if it did happen, which it probably happened, but what would be the point? Like, where would that be going? Like, I haven't the slightest idea what that could mean. Another thing to note is that Lindsay had told her father at some point prior to the murder that she was considering breaking up with Jason because he was controlling and possessive. But the police do not think that he is a suspect, and in fact nobody in his family is considered a suspect. Another thing is Shirley, Jason's mother. She is good friends with the man who owns the cul-de-sac, and in fact, an hour before the murder, he was there at the cul-de-sac supervising construction on some of the homes that weren't completed yet. But he is not a suspect. They don't really have a suspect. Another thing that we know is that the authorities looked at Lindsay's Facebook account and found that there were a bunch of deleted messages. They don't know what they were about or anything, but just a bunch of deleted messages. And when they looked at her friend list, she has a lot of friends who are somehow criminally connected. And the police feel that this has something to do with her murder. And they have still not declared it a cold case, but the father of Lindsay, his name is Jeff Buziak, he is not very pleased with how they've handled the case, simply because they haven't found the murderer. So you could imagine his frustration. This guy has devoted his life to finding his daughter's killer. He has been on Dateline. He has been on Dr. Phil. He holds a walk every February, like a remembrance walk, because he wants to keep her memory alive so that people will still keep trying to figure out who did it. He even has a website called LindsayBuziakMurder.com. And if you have a lot of free time, you can check it out. It's got tons and tons and tons and tons of information, people writing in, and just you name it, just everyone's ideas, the conspiracy theories, photos. And there was one time when somebody wrote in anonymously and said to the father, "I killed her, I admitted, but no one has found me and no one's gonna find me." I've kind of simplified what they actually said, but you get the point. So the father didn't know if that was real or fake or what, but they weren't able to find anything from it. So there's just been a lot of questions but no answers. What do you think? I honestly am stumped, like completely stumped. At first, for a while, I was thinking it's gotta be Jason. Like, why wouldn't it be Jason? Like, she said he was possessive and all that, but, you know, and why was he sitting outside? Why didn't he go in? You know, why wasn't he on time? Like, all these kind of things. But why would he have her killed like that? And what would his mother have to do with it? Like, I mean, there could be things that we don't know, of course, you know. Could it be the mistake angle that they thought she was a snitch? I don't know. Do they make mistakes like that? I mean, anything's possible, right? But why did she keep hanging out with people who were, like, deeply into the criminal underworld if she was such a regular, average person, you know, an upstanding citizen? Wouldn't she know what kind of people she was friends with? Like, why would those be her friends? Like, even her, you know, acquaintances on Facebook. It's just too much coincidence what your theories